This example shows how to graph the solution set to a system of 3 inequalities. Now, just like in the previous example where we did 2, I want to sketch the boundary lines for each of these inequalities using their intercepts. So for that first inequality in red, I have an x-intercept of +1 and a y-intercept of +2. So I sketch the boundary line as the line that passes through those 2 points. For the second inequality, I have an x-intercept at +6 and a y-intercept at -2. So I'm going to sketch the line that passes through those 2 points for that boundary line. And for my third inequality, I have an x-intercept of 3/4. So I'm going to estimate that a little bit. And my y-intercept is -3. And I'll sketch the line that passes through those 2 points for that boundary line. So now I have all 3 boundary lines drawn, so now it's time to figure out where I'm going to shade. So when I go to do the shading, you can shade each line individually, and that gets a little bit messy, but when you have 3 or more lines, sometimes it's necessary in order to see where the overlap is. So what I mean by that is for this first inequality in red, I'm going to use the test point 0, 0. And as you can see, I use 0, 0 as my test point for all 3 lines because none of those lines pass through 0, 0. But in this first inequality, when I plug in 0, 0, I get a false statement. So that means that I want to shade on the side of that red line where it's opposite of where 0, 0 is. So that's going to be a little bit to the right and above that line. For the second inequality in green, when I plug in 0, 0, I get a true statement. So in relation to this green line, I want to shade on the side where 0, 0 lies. So I'm just going to put in a little bit of shading to illustrate which side of that line I want to be on. And finally, for this third constraint in blue, I have a test point that gives me a false statement. So for the blue line, I want to be opposite of 0, 0. So 0, 0 is just a little to the left of that line. So I want to make sure that I remain on the right side of that line. So the overall shaded portion that I want to keep from my solution is where all 3 of these shadings overlap. So you can see that that region is here. So it's going to be cut off by this portion of my blue line, this portion of my red line, and that portion of my green line. So I'm just going to kind of highlight that in a different color and make sure that I shade that region. So it's just that overlap that is actually the solution to my system.